Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 9th Annual MedTech Investing Conference. Welcome back this morning. Hopefully everybody's had a good night's sleep. I'd like to start off and welcome you all by announcing today's audience as well as yesterday's. We've had 350 delegates registered from 28 U.S. states and 4 countries. 29% of the audience are investment professionals, 11% are corporate business development executives, 27% are C-level executives from medical device startups, 11% are service providers, 10% are academia, industry, and government representatives, 9% are manufacturers and R&D executives, and 3% are clinicians and physicians. Our premier sponsors are Oppenheimer, Wolf & Donnelly, and PwC. Our major sponsors are Faegre and Benson, RBC Capital Markets, and Wuxi AppTech. Our supporting sponsor is Capital Advisors Group. We also have 2 industry sponsors this year, AvaMed and MDMA. I'd also like to thank our exhibitors, Ancor, Creek Ridge Capital, DeviceX, MedCorp Branding, and Mintronics. If you have a chance sometime today, feel free to stop by each exhibit as they do have several pieces of information for you. I'd like to thank our track chairs, Dr. Richard Lindstrom, who had chaired the ophthalmology track, and Doug Fisher of Interwest, who stepped in for Emmett Cunningham, who was unable to attend. For our bariatric obesity innovation track, we had David Milne from SV Life Sciences, Women's Health, Linda Grace from Interwest, and ENT otolaryngology, Tony Natali from Prism Venture Works. I'd also like to thank Don Gonzalez of Intrigue Surgical, who was able to get the doctors for that session as well. Off to our conference chairman, Don Gerhardt of Life Science Alley, our advisory board members, Josh Baltzell and Chad Cornell, John Dietrich of Acuitive Medical Ventures, Sami Hamade of Aberdeer Ventures, Mark Duval of Duval & Associates, Bill Harrington from 3 Arch Partners, Jan Garfinkel from Arboretum Ventures, Sam Nickerson from Investor Growth Capital, Zubin Shroff from Gale & Associates, Ralph Weinberger from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Kevin Wasserstein from Versant Ventures, and Barbara Wrigley from Oppenheimer, Wolf & Donnelly. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our conference chairman, Don Gerhardt of Life Science Alley.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure again to do this. This is the 9th go-round, and I think, I know we're hitting some important points, and we just have an outstanding group of people and the largest group we've ever had. So we appreciate it. We appreciate the sponsors. Thank you, sponsors, and Craig, Carissa, and the troops from IBF, thank you very much for the fine job you do for us. It is a special time in the spring to see you all again. So let me talk at you a little bit. I want to give you some information that we think is important for the investing world, the growth of our companies here in the state and around the country too. This organization that I run, Life Science Alley, has been doing some interesting things. During a down time in the economy, the organization has been growing. It's now over 610 member companies. It's the largest associate member for the Bio Organization, the National Bio Organization, and for AdvaMed. We now see and feel the muscle that we've been trying to build, the girth we've been trying to build, in that we know we're now impacting legislation in the state and federally. We know that we have important input and then reaction from AdvaMed and Bio, and we need to use that. And I want to talk a little bit about how we are using that right now, and let you know the values we're trying to add that we think are directly connected to funding, to the growth of new companies, and to the health of the larger companies. So let me talk at you a bit about what's been going on, what have we been doing in the state and legislative activity that impacts directly what we're talking about here. Minnesota recently, about 3 weeks ago, passed the best angel tax credit legislation in the country. We think it has enormous impact both in the state, and we think it's going to have impact in states around us and in other provinces. So for instance, we've already talked to Manitoba, and they may be mirroring our angel tax credit so that we can get fund going across borders. So what's so good about this? Why is it different? And what should you know about what's available in the state? Well, it's a 25% refundable tax credit that skips across borders. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So a refundable 25% credit, individual income tax credit in that it runs against a person both living in Minnesota, outside Minnesota, and it is also available for dual filing of a Minnesota income tax, dual filing in Minnesota. It's for equity investments, and it's in startup high technology companies. So it has a relatively easy access to it in the definition of it. We'll talk about that a little bit. Again, it's for companies in Minnesota, and the qualifications for this are relatively, I'll call it simple and not highly complex. It requires a qualified investor, the typical qualified investor that you already know about, a qualifying fund, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and then the company and investment qualification. So this qualifying company, it must have headquarters in Minnesota. 51% of its employees and payroll needs to be in Minnesota. It needs to be engaged in a high-tech product and process. Fewer than 25 employees, less than 10 years old, less than $2 million in private equity already received. So it can be, doesn't have to be an exact, doesn't have to be an exact startup, a brand new. It can be already in action, but doesn't have a huge amount of money in it already. So as you can get these definitions off of our website, or the DEED website probably has a more defined one. The qualifying investment, minimum investment of an individual or a fund at the $10,000 and $30,000 level. Maximum credits, again, $125,000 per year per individual, or married filing jointly. Now, the companies can generate $4 million total in qualified investments. Excuse me. The allergies are getting at me, too. So what we've created now is something that we think will reinvigorate the angel investment world in the state of Minnesota. There's $51 million in 4 years that can be accessed by the investors. So it's a serious both opportunity and we really think some things are going to happen. So the company and investors must be certified as qualifying before the investment is made. So it's not a retroactive kind of thing, but it has great go forward. So getting certified, you have to connect with the Department of Employment and Economic Development here in Minnesota, commonly called DEED, and they're building questionnaires, et cetera, and there'll be a process, but it'll be a relatively simple process. It won't be one that you spend weeks and weeks on. So it looks like August 1st, maybe a little earlier, the action will start on it. So it's a big deal for us. The next thing that we worked on, now we worked on the tax credit I just talked about for 7 years. If you see a flat spot on my forehead, that's from beating my head against the wall for 7 years. But we finally figured out about 2 years ago that it needed a village to get this thing passed, because we could not get it passed. And so our sister organization, Biobusiness Alliance of Minnesota, other organizations in town and in the state got an entire state movement going. We now have the best one in the United States, and we think it's going to be very, very helpful. We also, at the same time, kind of as a surprise to us, again in this down economy, we're able to pass a tax credit, an R&D tax credit that was attached to the first bill, and we didn't even really ask for it to be attached. We were trying the other one. We didn't know if it was going to happen, and they both happened at the same time. So a great improvement in the R&D tax credit. that again is focused on both small and large companies, and we think will be very positive. Again, interesting information for those of you that may not have been around the state and live outside Minnesota. But a two-tier R&D tax credit, I won't go through all of the detail, but again, up to 10% refundable credit for that first $2 million spent, which is added to that 2.5 of expenditures over $2 million is really quite interesting. So qualifying companies now include S-corps, partnerships, and individuals in this R&D tax credit. Again, refundable, and the balance will be paid in cash. So both in this one and then the one I talked about earlier, the angel investment tax credit, people from outside the state or outside the country, if they don't have a Minnesota tax liability, get cash back from the state. So that we think will be an interesting thing to watch over this next year. We already have lots of interest from Wisconsin. I talked to the premier in Manitoba. It looks as if Manitoba may build a mirror tax credit in Manitoba so that we can get cash going across, investment going across the border. We're really happy with where that is headed. So another thing we've been very, very involved in, we have a 510K action committee. A lot of you know what's going on or potentially could go on with the 510K. We have done some research here in Minnesota, and it looks as if somewhere around 60% of our medtech companies in the state are highly dependent on 510K. Highly dependent on 510K, and that is an extremely important number for us. So we're very, very involved. We've got a group of 10 of our company representatives that are on a 510K action group, and we have been doing lots of work that probably culminated a bit in the FDA being here for a town hall meeting Tuesday of this week that drew about 500 people and a lot of discussion. So in our 510K action committee, been doing this, already defined that the kind of participation we've got. We then speak back to all of our membership and get input from all of our membership, but have a steering committee. We're being a constructive partner to the legislators and regulators. We have national coalition partners then with MDMA, with the National Imaging Association, with National Venture Capital Association, and a couple of other organizations are involved in this, along with the University of Minnesota, and Baker and Daniels is our kind of office in Washington, D.C. We're then talking with AdvaMed and others, but the original group of organizations are the ones we're working with on this 510K, and we think it's another 12 months we're going to be working on it. But we think some things are beginning to happen. So our goal is to gather data and feedback and then offer reasoned input into the 510K process and its impact in industry. So we were able to have a private session with Dr. Surin and his staff after the open meeting in the morning on Tuesday. The forum, we think, went off well, but we don't know final results. We have gotten comments from the FDA that there will be follow-up meetings back with us, and they want to communicate with us, so we're happy with that. So our general legislative update is over, but let me tell you, the national ties are starting to impact both our state and our ability to help our membership and people that we work with. We've got a lot of government relations, again, because we're that large state affiliate. We are close with AdvaMed Pharma, MDMA, and MDMA and AdvaMed are both here today, the CEOs, and other legislative accomplishments that we've done here in the state of Minnesota. We defeated clinical trials registration disclosure that looked like it was going to be something built that the rest of the country could rely on, that would really delay and mess up clinical trials. We got that out of the way. We defeated a drug and device marketing legislation that again would have been key in the rest of the states, that would have created an opportunity for every state to have a different law on device and drug marketing, and we didn't want that. We're very, very active in the federal legislation with our 2 senators that are really key in a lot of what's going to be going on in the next year, and we have also lots of help from our representatives such as Eric Paulson, who is really being helpful in this. So working hard on implementation of guide rails and some other kinds of things that can protect smaller companies. So those of you that aren't participating with us, get involved. We've got a committee, a government committee. We do a lot of the other things that you've seen. And if you want to find out more of what we do, just contact Frank Jaskulke, our member service guy. He's here today. We then have an annual conference coming up in December that we call Health Tomorrow, that'll have somewhere in the range of 1,500 to 2,000 attendees, and over 600 organizations will be participating. That's it. That's my information for you this morning. Again, I really want to welcome you and thank you for participating with us, and thank you for listening about the things we're doing that we think are helping the companies that we're talking about today, both now and into the future. So it's an absolute pleasure working for you and with you. So let's get the day going.